Question 1. Cost-benefit analysis shows that adopting a new range of potentially hazardous art materials could significantly enhance student creative output and attract new enrollments, but also presents potential health risks to students and staff. Which approach best aligns with the Adelaide Central School of Arts obligations under Australian Work Health and Safety (WHS) legislation? Option A. Rely on the fact that similar materials have been used without reported incidents in other institutions, deeming them safe for use without further investigation. Option B. Proceed with the adoption of the new materials immediately to capitalize on the perceived benefits, assuming that any risks can be managed reactively if incidents occur. Option C. Implement the new materials with minimal initial assessment, focusing on providing personal protective equipment as a primary control measure without a comprehensive hazard identification process. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, identifying specific hazards of the new materials, evaluating their potential impact, and implementing appropriate control measures in consultation with students and staff. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, identifying specific hazards of the new materials, evaluating their potential impact, and implementing appropriate control measures in consultation with students and staff. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the Adelaide Central School of Art, as an educational institution, has a responsibility to ensure the safety and well-being of its students and staff. The introduction of new materials, even if seemingly beneficial for artistic expression, carries inherent risks that must be proactively identified and managed. A superficial assessment that focuses solely on the immediate benefits without considering potential harms would be professionally negligent. Careful judgment is required to balance the pursuit of artistic innovation with the imperative of maintaining a secure and healthy learning environment, adhering to Australian Workplace Health and Safety (WHS) legislation and the school's own duty of care. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies potential hazards associated with the new art materials, evaluates the likelihood and severity of harm, and implements appropriate control measures. This aligns with the principles of the Work Health and Safety Act 2012, SA, and associated regulations, which mandate that persons conducting a business or undertaking (PCBU) must, so far as is reasonably practicable, eliminate or minimize risks to health and safety. This includes consulting with workers, in this case, students and staff, and considering their views when making decisions about health and safety matters. The focus on identifying specific hazards, assessing their risks, and developing mitigation strategies is a cornerstone of effective WHS management. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate cost savings over safety would fail to meet the legal obligations under the WHS Act. For instance, simply proceeding with the use of the materials without a thorough risk assessment would be a direct contravention of the duty to identify and control hazards. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on anecdotal evidence or the absence of past incidents to deem materials safe, ignores the proactive and preventative nature of WHS legislation. The absence of reported incidents does not equate to the absence of risk. Furthermore, failing to consult with students and staff about the potential risks and control measures would violate the spirit and letter of WHS laws, which emphasize consultation and participation. Professionals in this situation should employ a structured decision-making process. This involves 1. Hazard identification. What are the potential dangers of these new materials? 2. Risk assessment. How likely is harm and how severe could it be? 3. Control measures. What steps can be taken to eliminate or reduce these risks? 4. Consultation. Engaging with students and staff to gather their input and ensure buy-in. 5. Review and monitoring. Regularly checking the effectiveness of control measures and updating the assessment as needed. This systematic process ensures that decisions are evidence-based, legally compliant, and ethically sound, prioritizing the health and safety of the school community. Question 2. Cost-benefit analysis shows that expanding the Adelaide Central School of Arts facilities could significantly increase revenue and student intake, but also introduces potential challenges related to increased operational costs, strain on existing resources, and the need for new academic staff. Which approach best balances the potential benefits with the inherent risks in this scenario? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify, analyze, and evaluate all potential risks, developing mitigation strategies before committing to the expansion. Option B. Focus solely on securing the maximum possible funding for the expansion, with the expectation that financial resources will inherently solve any operational or academic challenges. Option C. Prioritize the aesthetic appeal of the new facilities, assuming that increased student numbers will naturally offset any unforeseen operational difficulties. Option D. Proceed with the expansion immediately to capitalize on the projected revenue growth, addressing any issues as they arise. The correct answer is D. Proceed with the expansion immediately to capitalize on the projected revenue growth, addressing any issues as they arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the Adelaide Central School of Art, as an educational institution, has a responsibility to its students, staff, and the wider community to operate ethically and in compliance with Australian educational regulations. The decision regarding the proposed expansion involves balancing potential benefits against inherent risks, requiring a nuanced approach that prioritizes student welfare and academic integrity above all else. Careful judgment is essential to ensure that any expansion aligns with the school's mission and values and does not compromise the quality of education or create undue financial strain. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential risks associated with the expansion. This includes considering financial viability, impact on existing programs, student and staff capacity, and potential reputational damage. By prioritizing the mitigation of identified risks and ensuring that the benefits demonstrably outweigh these risks, the school can make an informed and responsible decision. This aligns with the principles of good governance and responsible management expected of Australian educational institutions, which are often guided by frameworks like the Tertiary Education Quality and Standards Agency, TEQSA, Act and associated standards, emphasizing student outcomes and institutional sustainability. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the potential financial gains of the expansion, without adequately considering the associated risks, fails to meet regulatory expectations. Such an approach could lead to unforeseen financial difficulties, negatively impact student experience, and potentially breach the duty of care owed to students. This overlooks the ethical obligation to ensure the long-term viability and quality of the educational offering. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough risk evaluation is also professionally unacceptable. Rushing the decision-making process without adequate due diligence can result in overlooking critical risks, leading to costly mistakes, reputational damage, and a failure to uphold the standards of academic excellence and student support expected of an art school. This demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and foresight. A third incorrect approach that dismisses potential negative impacts on existing student cohorts or faculty as minor inconveniences, rather than thoroughly assessing their significance, is also flawed. This demonstrates a disregard for the well-being and operational effectiveness of the current school community, which is a fundamental ethical consideration for any educational institution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with clearly defining the scope of the proposed project. Next, a thorough identification of all potential risks, both internal and external, should be conducted. These risks should then be analyzed in terms of their likelihood and potential impact. Following this, risks should be evaluated against established criteria to determine their significance. Finally, appropriate strategies for risk mitigation, transfer, acceptance, or avoidance should be developed and implemented, with ongoing monitoring and review. This systematic process ensures that decisions are evidence-based, ethically sound, and aligned with regulatory requirements and institutional objectives. Question 3. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant similarity score between a student's submitted artwork analysis and publicly available critical essays. What is the most appropriate initial step for the Adelaide Central School of Art to take? Option A. Conduct a preliminary review of the student's work and the flagged sources to assess the nature and extent of the similarity before any direct communication with the student. Option B. Immediately inform the student that they are suspected of plagiarism and initiate disciplinary proceedings. Option C. Forward the student's submission and the monitoring system report to the school's legal counsel for immediate action. Option D. Disregard the monitoring system's alert, assuming it is a technical error, and proceed with grading the student's submission. The correct answer is B. Immediately inform the student that they are suspected of plagiarism and initiate disciplinary proceedings. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an art school to balance its commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment with the need to identify and support students who may be struggling. The monitoring system's output, indicating potential plagiarism, necessitates a careful and ethical response that respects student rights while upholding the school's standards. The challenge lies in determining the appropriate level of intervention and investigation without prejudging the student or creating an overly punitive environment. The correct approach involves a multi-stage process of investigation and communication, beginning with a preliminary review of the flagged work, and then engaging directly with the student. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with principles of natural justice and procedural fairness, which are implicit in the operational guidelines of educational institutions. Specifically, it prioritizes gathering more information before making any accusations, offering the student an opportunity to explain their process, and considering the possibility of unintentional errors or misunderstandings. This aligns with the educational mission of fostering learning and development, rather than solely focusing on punitive measures. An incorrect approach would be to immediately assume academic misconduct and impose penalties based solely on the monitoring system's alert. This fails to acknowledge that such systems can generate false positives or that students may have legitimate reasons for similarities in their work, such as common source material or collaborative efforts that were not properly disclosed. This approach violates principles of fairness by not allowing the student to present their case and can lead to unjust outcomes. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the alert entirely. This would be a dereliction of the school's responsibility to maintain academic standards and could allow genuine instances of plagiarism to go unaddressed, undermining the integrity of the institution and devaluing the work of honest students. Fails to uphold the ethical obligation to ensure a fair and equitable learning environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Acknowledge and review the alert from the monitoring system. 2. Conduct an initial, objective assessment of the flagged content to determine the likelihood of actual misconduct. 3. If further investigation is warranted, initiate a confidential conversation with the student, explaining the concern and providing them with an opportunity to respond and clarify their work. 4. Consider all available evidence, including the student's explanation, before making any determination. 5. Apply the school's established academic integrity policies consistently and fairly. 6. Focus on educational outcomes and support where appropriate, alongside any necessary disciplinary actions. Question 4. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new, experimental digital art program could significantly increase enrollment and attract external funding, but also carries a risk of alienating traditional art students and requiring substantial investment in unproven technology. Which approach best navigates this situation for the Adelaide Central School of Art? Option A. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, identifying potential negative impacts on traditional students and the school's artistic identity, and develop mitigation strategies before committing resources. Option B. Prioritize the acquisition of the latest digital art technology, assuming that its presence will naturally attract students and funding without further analysis. Option C. Proceed with the digital art program immediately, as the potential financial and enrollment benefits clearly outweigh the speculative risks. Option D. Delay the decision indefinitely, as the risks associated with new technology and student alienation are too significant to overcome. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the digital art program immediately, as the potential financial and enrollment benefits clearly outweigh the speculative risks. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the perceived benefits of a new initiative against its potential risks and costs, all within the specific context of the Adelaide Central School of Art's operational and ethical framework. The challenge lies in ensuring that any decision made is not only financially sound, but also aligns with the school's mission, values, and any relevant Australian educational or arts sector regulations, even if not explicitly detailed in the exam scope. A thorough risk assessment is crucial to identify potential negative outcomes and develop mitigation strategies, ensuring the school's reputation and student experience are protected. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that goes beyond a simple cost-benefit analysis. This approach acknowledges that while financial considerations are important, they are not the sole determinant of a successful initiative. It requires identifying potential risks, e.g., reputational damage, impact on student learning, resource strain, evaluating their likelihood and impact, and developing strategies to mitigate them. This aligns with principles of good governance and responsible management expected of educational institutions, ensuring that decisions are well-informed and consider the broader implications for the school community and its stakeholders. While specific Australian regulations for art schools might not be detailed, general principles of educational institution management and ethical conduct would apply, emphasizing due diligence and foresight. An approach that solely focuses on the immediate financial benefits, ignoring potential negative impacts on student experience or the school's artistic integrity, is professionally unacceptable. This failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment could lead to unforeseen problems that outweigh the initial financial gains and could damage the school's reputation. Similarly, an approach that prioritizes a novel but unproven artistic methodology without considering its practical implementation challenges, resource requirements, or potential impact on student learning outcomes demonstrates a lack of due diligence. This overlooks the need for a balanced perspective that integrates artistic vision with practical operational realities and ethical considerations, potentially leading to wasted resources or a compromised educational experience. Professionals in educational settings should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the objective of the initiative. This should be followed by a comprehensive identification of all potential risks and benefits, considering both tangible and intangible factors. The next step involves evaluating these risks and benefits, prioritizing those with the greatest potential impact. Finally, mitigation strategies should be developed for identified risks, and a decision should be made based on a holistic understanding of the potential outcomes, ensuring alignment with the institution's mission and ethical standards. Question 5. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a proposed partnership with a commercial gallery could significantly increase the school's revenue through exhibition fees and sales commissions. However, this partnership might also expose students to a more market-driven artistic environment, potentially influencing their creative development in ways that diverge from the school's traditional emphasis on experimental practice. What is the most professionally responsible approach for the Adelaide Central School of Art to take? Option A. Immediately accept the partnership to secure the increased revenue, as the financial benefits are clearly quantifiable and advantageous. Option B. Reject the partnership outright due to the potential for negative influence on student creative expression, without further investigation into mitigation strategies or the extent of the risk. Option C. Proceed with the partnership, but implement strict internal guidelines to shield students from any market pressures, assuming this will fully mitigate the risks. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that evaluates the potential impact on student artistic development, the school's reputation, and the integrity of its curriculum, alongside the financial benefits, before making a decision. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that evaluates the potential impact on student artistic development, the school's reputation, and the integrity of its curriculum, alongside the financial benefits, before making a decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the perceived benefits of a new initiative against its potential risks and costs, all within the specific context of an art school's operational and ethical considerations. The Adelaide Central School of Art, as an educational institution, has a responsibility to its students, staff, and the wider community to operate ethically and effectively. A risk assessment is crucial to ensure that any proposed changes, even those with apparent financial advantages, do not compromise the school's core mission, academic integrity, or student well-being. The challenge lies in objectively evaluating both tangible and intangible factors, moving beyond a purely financial cost-benefit calculation to encompass broader institutional values and potential reputational damage. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that integrates the cost-benefit analysis with a thorough evaluation of potential negative impacts. This approach acknowledges that, while financial benefits are important, they must not come at the expense of the school's educational standards, student experience, or ethical obligations. Specifically, it requires identifying, analyzing, and evaluating risks associated with the proposed initiative, considering factors such as reputational damage, impact on student learning, resource allocation, and compliance with any relevant educational or arts sector guidelines. This aligns with the professional responsibility of educational leaders to make decisions that are not only financially sound, but also ethically defensible and aligned with the institution's mission and values. An approach that solely focuses on the immediate financial gains identified in the cost-benefit analysis is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from an incomplete risk assessment, neglecting to consider the potential for intangible losses such as damage to the school's reputation, a decline in student satisfaction, or a negative impact on the quality of artistic education. Such an oversight can lead to long-term detrimental consequences that outweigh any short-term financial benefits. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the initiative entirely based on a preliminary, unquantified fear of risk without a structured assessment. While caution is warranted, a complete rejection without a systematic evaluation of potential benefits and manageable risks is also professionally unsound. It stifles innovation and prevents the school from potentially realizing valuable opportunities. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with clearly defining the scope and objectives of the initiative. Next, potential risks and benefits should be identified, considering both quantitative and qualitative factors. These risks should then be analyzed to understand their likelihood and potential impact. Following this, strategies for mitigating or managing identified risks should be developed. Finally, a decision should be made based on a holistic evaluation of the risk-adjusted benefits, ensuring alignment with the institution's strategic goals, ethical principles, and regulatory environment. Question 6. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a proposed new digital art suite could significantly increase student enrollment and attract external grants, but also requires substantial upfront investment and ongoing technical support, potentially diverting resources from traditional studio practices. Which approach best balances the potential benefits with the inherent risks for the Adelaide Central School of Art? Option A. Focus solely on the potential for increased enrollment and grant funding, assuming that any resource challenges can be addressed reactively as they arise. Option B. Prioritize the digital art suite due to the clear financial benefits and potential for growth, reallocating existing studio resources to accommodate the new technology. Option C. Implement the digital art suite immediately to capitalize on the grant opportunities, deferring any detailed risk assessment until after the initial setup is complete. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential impacts on traditional art programs, student learning experiences, and resource allocation, developing mitigation strategies before proceeding. The correct answer is B. Prioritize the digital art suite due to the clear financial benefits and potential for growth, reallocating existing studio resources to accommodate the new technology. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the perceived benefits of a new initiative against its potential risks and resource implications, all within the context of an educational institution. The Adelaide Central School of Art, as an educational provider, has a responsibility to ensure that any new program or resource acquisition aligns with its educational mission, student welfare, and financial sustainability. A superficial cost-benefit analysis that overlooks qualitative factors or potential negative impacts on the learning environment would be professionally unsound. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that goes beyond immediate financial costs and benefits. This includes identifying potential risks such as the impact on student learning outcomes, the strain on existing resources, staff time, studio space, equipment, reputational damage if the initiative fails or is poorly implemented, and the ethical considerations of resource allocation. A thorough risk assessment would involve consulting with relevant stakeholders, faculty, students, administration, developing mitigation strategies for identified risks, and ensuring that the proposed initiative demonstrably enhances the educational experience and aligns with the school's strategic goals. This aligns with the general principles of good governance and responsible management expected of educational institutions, ensuring that decisions are well-informed and serve the best interests of the students and the institution. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the quantifiable financial benefits, such as potential increased enrollment or external funding, without adequately considering the qualitative risks. This fails to acknowledge the primary purpose of the school, which is education, and could lead to decisions that undermine the quality of student learning or the operational integrity of the institution. Another incorrect approach would be to proceed with the initiative without a structured risk assessment process, relying on intuition or the opinions of a select few. This bypasses due diligence and exposes the school to unforeseen negative consequences, potentially leading to resource wastage, student dissatisfaction, and damage to the school's reputation. A failure to consult with key stakeholders during the assessment phase also represents a significant ethical and professional failing, as it neglects the diverse perspectives and potential impacts on those most affected by the decision. Professionals in educational leadership should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a holistic evaluation. This involves clearly defining the objectives of any proposed initiative, systematically identifying potential risks and benefits, both quantitative and qualitative, assessing the likelihood and impact of these risks, developing strategies to mitigate unacceptable risks, and making a final decision based on a balanced consideration of all factors, with a strong emphasis on the educational mission and student well-being. This structured approach ensures accountability and promotes informed, responsible decision-making. Question 7. Cost-benefit analysis shows that proceeding with the proposed student art exhibition, which includes potentially provocative imagery and materials that could elicit strong public reactions and pose minor physical safety concerns, offers significant benefits in terms of student exposure and institutional profile. However, a preliminary risk assessment has identified several potential issues, including the possibility of public disturbance, minor damage to the venue, and the emotional distress of some viewers. Given these factors, which approach best aligns with the Adelaide Central School of Art's responsibilities? Option A. Conduct a thorough and documented risk assessment. Develop specific and robust mitigation strategies for each identified risk, and proceed with the exhibition only if the residual risk is deemed acceptable and manageable according to institutional safety policies and ethical guidelines. Option B. Proceed with the exhibition as planned, relying on the institution's reputation to manage any negative fallout and assuming that the artistic value outweighs potential minor disruptions. Option C. Proceed with the exhibition but implement only minimal, low-cost security measures, such as posting a single attendant at the entrance, to address the identified risks. Option D. Postpone the exhibition indefinitely until all identified risks can be completely eliminated, even if this means sacrificing the opportunity for student exposure and institutional recognition. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the exhibition as planned, relying on the institution's reputation to manage any negative fallout and assuming that the artistic value outweighs potential minor disruptions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the Adelaide Central School of Art, as an educational institution, has a responsibility to ensure the safety and well-being of its students and staff. The decision to proceed with an exhibition, despite identified risks, requires a careful balancing of artistic expression and potential harm. The challenge lies in accurately assessing the severity and likelihood of the identified risks and determining whether the proposed mitigation strategies are sufficient to justify proceeding. This involves not only an understanding of the art itself, but also an awareness of potential public reactions, safety protocols, and the institution's duty of care. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that prioritizes student and public safety above all else. This means identifying all potential hazards associated with the exhibition, evaluating the likelihood and severity of harm, and implementing robust mitigation strategies. If, after thorough assessment, the residual risk remains unacceptably high, the responsible decision is to postpone or cancel the exhibition until such risks can be adequately addressed. This aligns with the general principles of duty of care expected of educational institutions and the ethical considerations surrounding the presentation of potentially controversial or hazardous content. The focus must be on proactive risk management and ensuring that the benefits of the exhibition do not come at the cost of safety. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the exhibition solely based on the perceived artistic merit or the potential for positive publicity, without adequately addressing the identified safety concerns. This demonstrates a failure to uphold the institution's duty of care and an ethical lapse in prioritizing institutional goals over the well-being of individuals. Another incorrect approach would be to implement superficial or inadequate mitigation measures that do not genuinely reduce the identified risks to an acceptable level. This could involve relying on vague assurances or assuming that potential problems will not materialize, which is a form of negligence. Such approaches fail to engage in the rigorous and objective risk assessment required, potentially exposing the institution and its community to harm. Professionals in this situation should employ a structured decision-making process. This begins with a thorough identification of all potential risks, followed by a detailed evaluation of their likelihood and impact. Next, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and assessed for their effectiveness. A critical step is to determine whether the residual risk after mitigation is acceptable. This often involves consulting with relevant stakeholders, including safety officers, legal counsel, and potentially external experts. If the residual risk remains too high, the decision-making process must include contingency plans, such as postponement or cancellation, and clear communication of the reasons for such decisions. The ultimate goal is to make an informed, responsible, and ethically sound decision that protects the institution and its community. Question 8. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a proposed expansion into digital art workshops could significantly increase revenue for the Adelaide Central School of Art, but also introduces new technical infrastructure needs and potential cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Which approach best addresses the responsible implementation of this initiative? Option A. Prioritize the immediate implementation of the digital art workshops to capitalize on the projected revenue, assuming that any arising technical issues can be resolved reactively as they occur. Option B. Focus solely on the projected revenue increase, as the potential for technical issues is minimal, and the school has a strong reputation that will mitigate any negative impact from minor disruptions. Option C. Delegate the decision-making entirely to the IT department, trusting their judgment to manage any technical challenges without requiring a formal risk assessment or cost-benefit analysis from other departments. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify, analyze, and develop mitigation strategies for all potential technical, operational, and cybersecurity risks, alongside a detailed financial projection of benefits and costs. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify, analyze, and develop mitigation strategies for all potential technical, operational, and cybersecurity risks, alongside a detailed financial projection of benefits and costs. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the perceived benefits of a new initiative against its potential risks and resource implications, all within the specific context of an art school's educational mission and operational constraints. The Adelaide Central School of Art operates under Australian educational regulations and guidelines, which emphasize student welfare, academic integrity, and responsible resource management. A thorough risk assessment is crucial to ensure that any proposed venture aligns with these principles and does not compromise the quality of education or the institution's financial stability. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies potential threats, analyzes their likelihood and impact, and develops mitigation strategies. This aligns with principles of good governance and responsible management expected of educational institutions in Australia. It ensures that decisions are informed by a realistic understanding of potential downsides, allowing for proactive planning and resource allocation to safeguard the school's objectives and reputation. This approach is ethically sound, as it prioritizes the well-being of students and the long-term viability of the institution. An approach that focuses solely on the potential financial gains without adequately considering the qualitative risks to student experience or academic standards is ethically flawed. It prioritizes short-term financial benefits over the core educational mission and the welfare of students, which is a failure to uphold the duty of care expected of an educational provider. An approach that dismisses potential risks due to their perceived low probability without a structured analysis of their potential impact is professionally negligent. This overlooks the possibility of unforeseen events and fails to implement appropriate contingency planning, potentially exposing the school to significant disruption or reputational damage. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal opinions rather than a systematic, data-driven risk assessment is unprofessional and lacks the rigor required for sound decision-making in an educational setting. This can lead to biased judgments and a failure to identify critical vulnerabilities. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the scope and objectives of the initiative. This is followed by a structured risk identification process, where all potential risks are brainstormed and documented. Subsequently, each identified risk should be analyzed for its likelihood and potential impact, often using a risk matrix. Based on this analysis, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed, and a plan for monitoring and reviewing risks is established. This systematic process ensures that decisions are well-informed, balanced, and aligned with the institution's strategic goals and ethical responsibilities. Question 9. Cost-benefit analysis shows that investing in a new digital art studio could significantly enhance student engagement and attract prospective students, but it also introduces new technical complexities and requires substantial upfront investment. Which approach best navigates the potential challenges and ensures responsible decision-making for the Adelaide Central School of Art? Option A. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, identifying potential financial, operational, academic, and reputational risks, and develop mitigation strategies before committing to the investment. Option B. Defer the decision indefinitely due to the inherent risks and the need for further research, potentially missing out on opportunities. Option C. Proceed with the investment immediately to capitalize on the perceived benefits and maintain a competitive edge, addressing any issues as they arise. Option D. Prioritize the acquisition of the latest technology, regardless of its direct relevance to the school's core curriculum, assuming it will inherently improve the educational offering. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, identifying potential financial, operational, academic, and reputational risks, and develop mitigation strategies before committing to the investment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the perceived benefits of a new initiative against potential risks and resource allocation, all within the context of an educational institution. The Adelaide Central School of Art, as an educational provider, has a responsibility to ensure that any new program or resource acquisition aligns with its mission, academic standards, and financial sustainability. A thorough risk assessment is crucial to avoid making decisions that could negatively impact student experience, faculty resources, or the institution's reputation. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential risks associated with the proposed digital art studio. This includes considering financial risks, e.g., unexpected maintenance costs, obsolescence, operational risks, e.g., technical failures, staff training needs, academic risks, e.g., impact on traditional art practices, curriculum integration, and reputational risks, e.g., if the technology fails to deliver on its promise. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with good governance principles for educational institutions, ensuring responsible stewardship of resources and a commitment to providing a high-quality learning environment. It prioritizes informed decision-making over impulsive adoption. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the digital art studio solely based on the initial cost-benefit analysis, without a deeper risk evaluation. This could lead to significant unforeseen expenses, disruption to existing programs, or a failure to adequately train staff, all of which could compromise the quality of education offered. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the initiative entirely due to a fear of the unknown, without a structured process to explore potential benefits and mitigate risks. This would stifle innovation and potentially miss an opportunity to enhance the student experience and the school's standing. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize the perceived modernity of the technology over its practical application and integration into the curriculum, potentially leading to a superficial adoption that does not genuinely benefit students. Professionals in educational settings should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the objectives of any proposed initiative. This should be followed by a thorough risk assessment process, involving input from relevant stakeholders, faculty, IT, finance, students. The findings of the risk assessment should then inform the final decision, with clear mitigation strategies in place for identified risks. This iterative process ensures that decisions are not only financially sound, but also academically robust and ethically responsible. Question 10. The audit findings indicate potential irregularities in the allocation of student scholarships over the past 3 academic years, suggesting a possible breach of the school's stated financial aid policies. What is the most appropriate initial step for the Adelaide Central School of Art Administration to take? Option A. Instruct the finance department to adjust past scholarship records to align with the audit's perceived intent, without further investigation. Option B. Immediately suspend all scholarship allocations pending a full external investigation, informing the student body of the potential issues. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive and confidential internal review to verify the audit's conclusions and understand the extent of any discrepancies, engaging relevant internal departments and potentially external expertise if necessary. Option D. Publicly acknowledge the audit findings and assure stakeholders that the matter is being addressed, without detailing the specific nature of the irregularities. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive and confidential internal review to verify the audit's conclusions and understand the extent of any discrepancies, engaging relevant internal departments and potentially external expertise if necessary. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the applicant to balance the need for transparency and accountability with the potential for reputational damage and the need to protect the institution's interests. The audit findings, if not handled appropriately, could lead to public scrutiny, decreased enrollment, and loss of donor confidence. Careful judgment is required to determine the most ethical and effective course of action. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective, and confidential investigation into the audit findings. This means gathering all relevant information, assessing the validity and scope of the issues identified, and then developing a plan to address them. This approach aligns with principles of good governance, risk management, and ethical conduct expected of educational institutions. Specifically, it upholds the responsibility to act in the best interests of the school and its stakeholders by proactively identifying and rectifying problems, rather than ignoring or downplaying them. This also demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement and maintaining the integrity of the institution's operations. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the audit findings without proper review. This fails to acknowledge the potential for genuine issues and neglects the duty of care to investigate and address concerns. It could be seen as an attempt to avoid scrutiny or accountability, which is ethically unsound and could lead to the problems escalating. Another incorrect approach would be to publicly disclose the audit findings without a comprehensive understanding of their implications or a plan to address them. This premature disclosure could cause unnecessary panic, damage the school's reputation, and potentially prejudice any subsequent investigation or remediation efforts. It prioritizes sensationalism over responsible management. A further incorrect approach would be to selectively share the audit findings with only a select group of stakeholders, while withholding information from others who have a legitimate interest. This lack of transparency and fairness can erode trust and create an environment of suspicion. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a structured approach. First, understand the nature and scope of the findings. Second, conduct a thorough and objective assessment. Third, consult with relevant internal and external advisors, e.g., legal counsel, governance experts. Fourth, develop a clear and actionable plan for remediation. And finally, communicate transparently and appropriately with all affected stakeholders once a clear understanding and plan are in place. This process emphasizes due diligence, ethical responsibility, and strategic communication. Question 11. Upon reviewing an applicant's portfolio for the Bachelor of Visual Arts program, the admissions committee notes a highly unconventional and experimental approach to materials, which is artistically compelling, but lacks clear technical execution in some areas. The applicant's statement of intent expresses a strong desire to push boundaries and explore new forms of artistic expression. How should the admissions committee approach the risk assessment for this applicant? Option A. Reject the applicant immediately due to the perceived lack of technical proficiency, as this indicates a fundamental inability to meet the program's standards. Option B. Focus primarily on the applicant's potential for future commercial success and marketability, as this is a key indicator of artistic merit and a valuable outcome for the school. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the applicant's artistic vision, potential for growth, and alignment with the school's ethos of innovation, while also considering whether the identified technical gaps can be addressed through the program's curriculum and faculty support. Option D. Admit the applicant based solely on the originality and wow factor of their portfolio, assuming that technical skills can be acquired later without significant intervention. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the applicant's artistic vision, potential for growth, and alignment with the school's ethos of innovation, while also considering whether the identified technical gaps can be addressed through the program's curriculum and faculty support. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the applicant's artistic vision and potential with the school's established curriculum and resource limitations. The admissions committee must make a judgment that is both fair to the applicant and responsible to the institution's academic standards and operational capacity. The risk assessment here is not purely financial, but also relates to the potential impact on student cohort quality, faculty workload, and the school's reputation. The correct approach involves a thorough, multifaceted risk assessment that considers the applicant's portfolio, statement of intent, and any supplementary materials against the school's admission criteria and program objectives. This approach is justified by the Adelaide Central School of Art's commitment to admitting students who demonstrate both artistic aptitude and the potential to succeed within its specific pedagogical framework. The risk assessment should identify potential areas where the applicant might struggle and explore whether these can be mitigated through support, or if they represent a fundamental mismatch. This aligns with the ethical responsibility to ensure that admitted students are likely to benefit from the program and contribute positively to the learning environment. An approach that focuses solely on the applicant's perceived wow factor, without a systematic evaluation of their preparedness for the program's demands, is ethically flawed. It risks admitting students who may not have the foundational skills or discipline to thrive, potentially leading to academic difficulties and a negative experience for both the student and the faculty. This fails to uphold the school's responsibility to maintain academic rigor. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the applicant based on a single perceived weakness without exploring its significance in the broader context of their application. This can be discriminatory and fails to acknowledge that artistic development is a process. The risk assessment should aim to understand the applicant's trajectory and potential for growth, not just their current standing. This overlooks the ethical imperative to provide equitable opportunities for assessment. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize the applicant's potential for future commercial success over their suitability for the current academic program. While the school may aim to foster successful artists, the primary risk assessment for admission must be about their capacity to engage with and benefit from the curriculum as it is currently structured. This misaligns the risk assessment with the immediate educational mission of the institution. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured evaluation framework that considers multiple dimensions of risk, including academic preparedness, artistic potential, alignment with program goals, and the applicant's capacity for growth. This framework should be applied consistently and transparently with clear criteria for assessment. It requires a balanced consideration of the applicant's strengths and weaknesses, and an understanding of how these might impact their success within the specific context of the Adelaide Central School of Art. Question 12. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new digital portfolio submission system for the Adelaide Central School of Art entrance exam could significantly reduce administrative overhead and potentially broaden the applicant pool. However, concerns have been raised about the technical infrastructure, data security, and the equitable accessibility of such a system for all prospective students. Which of the following approaches best addresses the responsible implementation of this new system? Option A. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify, analyze, and mitigate potential technical, security, and accessibility issues before full implementation, ensuring alignment with Australian educational standards for fairness and equity. Option B. Focus solely on the cost savings and efficiency benefits highlighted in the initial analysis, assuming that any potential risks are minor and manageable. Option C. Proceed with the digital submission system immediately to capitalize on perceived efficiency gains, addressing any issues that arise on a reactive basis. Option D. Implement the digital system, but limit its use to applicants who can demonstrate advanced technical proficiency, thereby minimizing potential technical support burdens. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify, analyze, and mitigate potential technical, security, and accessibility issues before full implementation, ensuring alignment with Australian educational standards for fairness and equity. Explanation: This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the perceived benefits of a new initiative against its potential risks and resource implications within the specific context of an art school's entrance process. The Adelaide Central School of Art entrance exam operates under Australian educational regulations and internal institutional guidelines. A rigorous risk assessment is crucial to ensure fairness, transparency, and the effective allocation of resources, all while upholding the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies, analyzes, and evaluates potential risks associated with implementing a new digital portfolio submission system. This includes considering technical failures, data security breaches, accessibility issues for applicants from diverse backgrounds, and the potential for bias in automated assessment tools. The justification for this approach lies in its alignment with principles of good governance and responsible innovation within educational institutions. Australian higher education standards emphasize fairness, equity, and the use of reliable and valid assessment methods. A thorough risk assessment ensures that the school proactively addresses potential pitfalls, thereby safeguarding the applicant experience and the credibility of its admissions decision. It also aligns with the ethical obligation to provide a fair and equitable opportunity for all prospective students. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the new system without a formal risk assessment, assuming that the perceived benefits of efficiency and modernity outweigh any potential drawbacks. This failure to conduct a risk assessment is a direct contravention of good governance principles and potentially breaches institutional policies that mandate due diligence in implementing new systems. It also risks violating ethical obligations to applicants by exposing them to an untested and potentially flawed process, leading to unfair outcomes and reputational damage for the school. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the cost savings and efficiency gains, neglecting the qualitative risks such as the potential for digital exclusion of applicants with limited internet access or technical proficiency. This narrow focus ignores the ethical imperative of accessibility and equity in admissions, which are fundamental to Australian educational standards. Such an approach could lead to discriminatory practices and undermine the school's commitment to diversity. A third incorrect approach would be to implement the digital system with a superficial risk assessment that only addresses obvious technical glitches, while overlooking more subtle risks like data privacy concerns or the potential for algorithmic bias in evaluating artistic merit. This superficiality fails to meet the standard of due diligence required for a critical admissions process. It exposes the institution to legal and ethical liabilities if applicant data is compromised, or if the assessment process is found to be unfair or discriminatory. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with clearly defining the scope and objectives of the proposed change. Next, a multidisciplinary team should be assembled to identify all potential risks, considering technical, operational, ethical, legal, and reputational aspects. Each identified risk should then be analyzed for its likelihood and potential impact. Based on this analysis, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented. Finally, ongoing monitoring and review of the implemented system and its associated risks are essential to ensure continued effectiveness and compliance. Question 13. The assessment process reveals a potential inconsistency between the applicant's stated artistic influences and the stylistic elements evident in their submitted portfolio. How should the assessor proceed to ensure a fair and objective evaluation? Option A. Disregard the portfolio as potentially misleading and focus solely on other aspects of the application. Option B. Discuss the applicant's portfolio and the perceived inconsistency with other faculty members without the applicant's knowledge to gather their opinions. Option C. Make an assumption about the applicant's understanding of their influences and mark down the portfolio based on this assumption. Option D. Seek direct clarification from the applicant regarding the perceived inconsistency, providing them an opportunity to explain their artistic journey and influences. The correct answer is D. Seek direct clarification from the applicant regarding the perceived inconsistency, providing them an opportunity to explain their artistic journey and influences. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the assessor to balance the need for thorough evaluation with the ethical obligation to maintain applicant confidentiality and avoid bias. The assessor must consider how to address potential inconsistencies or areas of concern without compromising the integrity of the assessment process or unfairly disadvantaging the applicant. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any follow-up actions are objective, fair, and directly related to the assessment criteria. The correct approach involves seeking clarification directly from the applicant regarding any discrepancies or areas that require further understanding. This method upholds the principles of fairness and transparency in the assessment process. By engaging the applicant, the assessor can gather additional context, allow the applicant to explain any perceived inconsistencies, and ensure that the evaluation is based on complete and accurate information. This aligns with the ethical duty to treat all applicants equitably and to make decisions based on merit, as implicitly guided by the principles of good governance and fair assessment practices expected in educational institutions. An incorrect approach that involves making assumptions or drawing conclusions based on incomplete information is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to biased evaluations and unfair outcomes, violating the ethical imperative to assess applicants objectively. Another incorrect approach, such as discussing the applicant's portfolio with other staff without explicit consent or a clear need for collaborative assessment, breaches confidentiality and can introduce undue influence or personal opinions into the evaluation, undermining the integrity of the process. Furthermore, dismissing the applicant's work outright due to minor perceived flaws without seeking further understanding demonstrates a lack of professional diligence and an unwillingness to engage in a fair assessment. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes objectivity, fairness, and transparency. This involves 1. Identifying any areas of concern or potential inconsistencies in the submitted materials. 2. Considering the assessment criteria and how these concerns relate to them. 3. Determining the most appropriate and ethical method for addressing these concerns, which often involves direct communication with the applicant. 4. Documenting all interactions and decisions made. And 5. Ensuring that the final assessment is based on a comprehensive and fair evaluation of the applicant's qualifications and potential. Question 14. Examination of the data shows that the Adelaide Central School of Art is considering implementing a new online application system for its entrance exam. To ensure a comprehensive evaluation of artistic potential and background, the admissions committee is debating the scope of personal information to be collected from applicants. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for assessment with the protection of applicant privacy under Australian regulatory frameworks? Option A. Collect only essential information directly relevant to assessing artistic aptitude and academic suitability for the course, clearly outlining the purpose of data collection and implementing robust data security measures. Option B. Collect a broad range of personal details, including family background, financial status, and social media profiles, to gain a holistic understanding of each applicant's life experiences and potential influences on their art. Option C. Collect extensive personal data and assume consent for its use in future marketing and alumni engagement activities, without explicit opt-in from applicants. Option D. Rely on informal data gathering methods, such as requesting references from individuals outside the applicant's direct artistic or academic network, to supplement the application. The correct answer is B. Collect a broad range of personal details, including family background, financial status, and social media profiles, to gain a holistic understanding of each applicant's life experiences and potential influences on their art. Explanation. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation because it requires balancing the need to gather essential information for the Adelaide Central School of Art's entrance exam with the ethical obligation to protect the privacy and sensitive personal data of prospective students. The school, as an educational institution, is bound by Australian privacy principles, particularly those outlined in the Privacy Act 1988, CTH, and relevant state-based privacy legislation in South Australia. The challenge lies in designing an assessment process that is both effective in evaluating artistic potential and compliant with these legal and ethical standards. Careful judgment is required to ensure that data collection is necessary, proportionate, and handled securely. The correct approach involves a risk-based assessment that prioritizes the collection of only necessary information, clearly communicates the purpose of data collection to applicants, and implements robust security measures for data storage and handling. This aligns with the Australian privacy principles, specifically APP3, correction of personal information, and App 11, access to and correction of personal information, which mandate that personal information should only be collected if it is reasonably necessary for the entity's functions or activities, and that individuals have rights to access and correct their information. Furthermore, App 12, concealment of personal information, and App 13, disclosure of personal information, are relevant, emphasizing that personal information should not be disclosed for a purpose other than its primary purpose of collection without consent, unless an exception applies. A risk assessment framework helps identify potential breaches of these principles and allows for the implementation of mitigation strategies. An incorrect approach that involves collecting extensive, non-essential personal details without a clear justification for their use in assessing artistic merit would violate APP3, as it would not be reasonably necessary for the school's functions. This could lead to unnecessary data exposure and potential misuse. Another incorrect approach, such as storing applicant data in unsecured formats or sharing it with third parties without explicit consent or a legal basis, would contravene APP 11 and APP 13, exposing the school to significant legal and reputational risks, and failing to uphold the trust placed in it by applicants. A third incorrect approach, failing to inform applicants about how their data will be used and protected, would breach the spirit of transparency and consent inherent in privacy legislation, potentially leading to a perception of data exploitation rather than a fair assessment process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic risk assessment. This begins with identifying the objectives of the data collection, e.g., assessing artistic skill, background, suitability for the course. Next, it involves identifying all personal information that could potentially be collected. Then, for each piece of information, assess its necessity for achieving the stated objectives and the potential risks associated with its collection, storage, and use. This should be followed by evaluating the legal and ethical implications, particularly in relation to Australian privacy laws. Finally, implement controls and procedures to mitigate identified risks, ensure transparency with applicants, and establish clear protocols for data handling and security. Question 15. Assessment of how an applicant to the Adelaide Central School of Art should address a past instance of academic misconduct in their application, specifically concerning the disclosure of this event and its implications for their suitability. Option A. Proactively disclose the past academic misconduct, providing a detailed explanation of the circumstances, acknowledging personal responsibility, outlining the lessons learned, and demonstrating a commitment to academic integrity moving forward. Option B. Briefly mention the academic misconduct without providing context or explanation, hoping it will be overlooked. Option C. Disclose the academic misconduct but attribute blame primarily to external factors or other individuals, minimizing personal accountability. Option D. Omit any mention of the past academic misconduct, assuming it will not be discovered, and focusing solely on artistic achievements. The correct answer is A. Proactively disclose the past academic misconduct, providing a detailed explanation of the circumstances, acknowledging personal responsibility, outlining the lessons learned, and demonstrating a commitment to academic integrity moving forward. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for an applicant to the Adelaide Central School of Art, EXA, regarding the disclosure of past academic misconduct. This is professionally challenging because it requires balancing honesty and transparency with the potential for negative consequences, impacting the applicant's chances of admission. Careful judgment is required to determine the appropriate level of disclosure and how to frame it, considering EXA admission policies and ethical expectations of its students. The correct approach involves a proactive and honest disclosure of the past academic misconduct, accompanied by a clear explanation of the circumstances, lessons learned, and demonstrated commitment to academic integrity moving forward. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty and integrity expected of all students within an educational institution. EXA, like most reputable art schools, will likely have admission guidelines that emphasize academic honesty. By disclosing the issue and demonstrating remorse and growth, the applicant shows maturity and a commitment to upholding these standards, which is crucial for building trust and demonstrating suitability for admission. This approach allows the admissions committee to make an informed decision based on a complete picture of the applicant's history and character. An incorrect approach would be to omit any mention of the academic misconduct. This failure to disclose is a direct breach of honesty and integrity. If discovered, it could lead to immediate rejection or even expulsion if admitted, as it demonstrates a lack of transparency and a willingness to mislead the institution. This undermines the trust essential in the student-institution relationship. Another incorrect approach would be to downplay the severity of the misconduct or to blame others entirely without taking personal responsibility. While context is important, a failure to acknowledge one's role in the misconduct and to articulate lessons learned suggests a lack of self-awareness and a potential for repeating the behavior. This demonstrates a lack of maturity and a failure to meet the ethical standards expected of an art school student. A further incorrect approach would be to disclose the misconduct in a way that is overly defensive or aggressive, or to present it as a minor inconvenience rather than a serious academic lapse. This can be perceived as a lack of respect for the admissions process and the institution's values. It fails to demonstrate the reflective learning and personal growth that EXA would seek in its applicants. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a thorough understanding of the institution's admission policies and ethical guidelines. Applicants should consider the potential impact of their disclosure on the admissions committee's perception. The core principle is to be truthful, transparent, and to demonstrate a commitment to learning and ethical conduct. This involves acknowledging past mistakes, explaining the context without making excuses, articulating what was learned, and providing evidence of changed behavior or a commitment to future integrity. Question 16. Which approach would be most effective in ensuring the integrity and fairness of the Adelaide Central School of Art entrance exam while accurately assessing artistic potential? Option A. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework to identify and mitigate potential threats to the admissions process, coupled with clear guidelines for applicants and robust verification procedures. Option B. Relying on informal checks and balances, addressing any integrity issues only as they arise during the admissions cycle. Option C. Establishing extremely stringent and complex application requirements designed to prevent any possibility of misrepresentation, even if it deters some genuine applicants. Option D. Prioritizing the evaluation of artistic merit above all else, with minimal scrutiny of the application process itself to avoid hindering creative expression. The correct answer is A. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework to identify and mitigate potential threats to the admissions process, coupled with clear guidelines for applicants and robust verification procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the Adelaide Central School of Art entrance exam, like any educational institution, has a responsibility to ensure a fair and transparent admissions process. The challenge lies in balancing the need to assess artistic potential with the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and prevent any perception of bias or unfair advantage. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that upholds these principles. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies potential risks to the integrity of the entrance exam process, and then develops strategies to mitigate those risks. This aligns with the general principles of good governance and risk management expected of educational institutions. Specifically, it requires a proactive and structured methodology to anticipate issues such as plagiarism, misrepresentation of work, or undue external influence. By identifying these risks early, the school can implement appropriate controls, such as clear guidelines for applicants, robust verification processes, and a well-defined appeals procedure. This approach is ethically sound as it promotes fairness, transparency, and accountability, ensuring that all applicants are evaluated on their own merits. An approach that focuses solely on the artistic merit of submissions without considering the integrity of the application process would be ethically flawed. This failure would stem from neglecting the fundamental responsibility to ensure that the work presented is genuinely the applicant's own, and that the evaluation criteria are applied consistently and fairly. Risks allowing unqualified individuals to gain admission based on misrepresented work, undermining the credibility of the institution and disadvantaging deserving applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to implement overly restrictive measures that stifle creativity or create undue barriers for genuine applicants. While risk mitigation is important, an approach that prioritizes security to the detriment of accessibility and the spirit of artistic exploration would be professionally unsound. This could lead to the exclusion of talented individuals who may not be adept at navigating complex bureaucratic processes, thereby failing to identify the best artistic talent. Finally, an approach that relies on ad hoc reactive measures rather than a structured, proactive risk assessment would be insufficient. This would mean addressing issues only after they arise, potentially leading to inconsistent application of standards, damage to the school's reputation, and a perception of unfairness among applicants. It fails to demonstrate a commitment to continuous improvement and robust governance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic identification of potential risks, an evaluation of their likelihood and impact, and the development of proportionate and effective mitigation strategies. This process should be documented, reviewed regularly, and communicated clearly to all stakeholders, including applicants and admissions staff. Question 17. Implementation of a new student artwork project involving potentially controversial themes and materials requires a thorough risk assessment. Which approach best aligns with the Adelaide Central School of Art's commitment to fostering creative expression while ensuring a safe and inclusive learning environment, adhering to Australian educational guidelines? Option A. Advise the student to modify their artwork significantly to remove any potentially controversial elements, without a formal assessment of the original proposal's risks or benefits. Option B. Prohibit the artwork outright due to the controversial nature of the themes, without engaging in a detailed assessment of the specific risks or potential mitigation. Option C. Immediately approve the project without further review, trusting the student's artistic judgment and assuming no potential risks exist. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment involving the student, faculty advisor, and relevant school administration, identifying potential hazards, assessing their impact, and developing appropriate mitigation strategies in consultation with school policy and Australian educational best practices. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment involving the student, faculty advisor, and relevant school administration, identifying potential hazards, assessing their impact, and developing appropriate mitigation strategies in consultation with school policy and Australian educational best practices. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the Adelaide Central School of Art, as an educational institution, has a responsibility to ensure a safe and inclusive learning environment for all students. The risk assessment process is crucial for identifying potential hazards and implementing appropriate controls to mitigate them. The challenge lies in balancing the need to foster creative expression with the imperative to protect students from harm, particularly when dealing with potentially sensitive or controversial artistic materials and themes. Careful judgment is required to ensure that risk assessments are thorough, proportionate, and aligned with the school's policies and relevant Australian educational guidelines. The correct approach involves a comprehensive and proactive risk assessment that considers the specific context of artistic creation at the Adelaide Central School of Art. This includes identifying potential physical, psychological, and social risks associated with the proposed artwork, such as the use of hazardous materials, the potential for distress or offense to other students or staff, and the implications for the school's reputation. The process should involve consultation with relevant stakeholders, including students, faculty, and administration, and should lead to the development of clear mitigation strategies and contingency plans. This aligns with the general principles of duty of care expected of educational institutions in Australia, which mandate the provision of a safe learning environment and adherence to best practices in risk management, as outlined by relevant state and national education authorities. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's concerns without a thorough evaluation. This demonstrates a failure to uphold the duty of care and a disregard for the potential impact on the student's well-being and the broader school community. It also fails to engage with the principles of responsible artistic practice, which acknowledge that creative expression should be considered within a framework of respect and safety. Another incorrect approach is to impose overly restrictive censorship without a clear, evidence-based justification tied to demonstrable harm or violation of established school policy or law. This stifles creative exploration and can create a climate of fear, undermining the educational mission of the art school. It fails to recognize that artistic expression often pushes boundaries and that the role of the institution is to guide this exploration responsibly, not to suppress it arbitrarily. A further incorrect approach is to delegate the entire decision-making process to the student without providing adequate guidance or oversight. While student agency is important, the institution retains ultimate responsibility for ensuring a safe and appropriate learning environment. This abdication of responsibility fails to meet the professional standards expected of an educational institution in managing risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This typically includes identifying hazards, assessing the likelihood and severity of harm, evaluating existing controls, determining the need for additional controls, implementing those controls, and reviewing their effectiveness. In an educational context, this process must be informed by an understanding of the specific curriculum, the developmental stage of the students, and the relevant legal and ethical obligations of the institution. Open communication, consultation, and a commitment to fostering a supportive and inclusive environment are paramount. Question 18. The efficiency study reveals that the current portfolio review process for the Adelaide Central School of Art entrance exam is time-consuming and may not consistently identify candidates with the most promising long-term artistic development potential due to the subjective nature of initial assessments. Which of the following approaches best addresses this finding while upholding the school's commitment to fair and rigorous artistic evaluation? Option A. Disregard the study's findings, as the current portfolio review process has been in place for many years and is considered a traditional method of artistic assessment. Option B. Introduce a mandatory online quiz on art history and theory for all applicants to standardize the assessment of artistic knowledge, thereby reducing the reliance on subjective portfolio evaluations. Option C. Conduct a pilot program for a revised portfolio review rubric that incorporates specific criteria for conceptual thinking and technical exploration, alongside a brief, standardized interview to gauge applicant motivation and understanding of artistic practice, and then analyze the results of this pilot to inform broader changes. Option D. Immediately implement a strict time limit for all portfolio reviews and reduce the number of reviewers to expedite the process, assuming that faster reviews will lead to greater efficiency. Correct answer is C. Conduct a pilot program for a revised portfolio review rubric that incorporates specific criteria for conceptual thinking and technical exploration, alongside a brief, standardized interview to gauge applicant motivation and understanding of artistic practice, and then analyze the results of this pilot to inform broader changes. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the Adelaide Central School of Art, as an educational institution, has a responsibility to maintain academic integrity and ensure fair assessment practices for all applicants. The efficiency study's findings, if not handled appropriately, could lead to perceptions of bias or unfair advantage, potentially undermining the school's reputation and the validity of its entrance process. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for operational efficiency with the ethical imperative of equitable opportunity for all prospective students. Correct approach involves a thorough review of the identified inefficiencies and their potential impact on the assessment process. This includes evaluating whether the current assessment methods are truly capturing the diverse artistic talents of applicants, or if they inadvertently favor certain backgrounds or preparation levels. The school must then consider implementing adjustments that enhance fairness and objectivity, without compromising the core artistic evaluation criteria. This aligns with the general principles of good governance and ethical conduct expected of educational institutions, ensuring that admissions processes are transparent, equitable, and focused on identifying genuine artistic potential. While specific regulations for art school entrance exams in Australia are not detailed here, the overarching principles of fairness, transparency, and non-discrimination in educational admissions are universally applicable and would be implicitly expected. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the efficiency study's findings without investigation, assuming the current assessment methods are inherently perfect. This fails to acknowledge potential systemic biases or areas where the process could be improved to better serve the school's mission of identifying diverse artistic talent. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of responsiveness to internal feedback and a potential disregard for the applicant experience. Another incorrect approach would be to implement drastic changes based solely on efficiency without considering the impact on the quality or fairness of the artistic assessment. For example, significantly shortening assessment times or reducing the scope of portfolio reviews solely to speed up the process could lead to superficial evaluations and disadvantage genuinely talented but less conventionally prepared applicants. This prioritizes operational speed over substantive artistic evaluation, which is contrary to the core purpose of an art school entrance exam. A further incorrect approach would be to implement changes that introduce new forms of bias. For instance, if the efficiency study suggests streamlining interviews by using predetermined, rigid question sets, this could disadvantage applicants who express their ideas or artistic process in less conventional ways, or those who require more nuanced questioning to articulate their vision. This would be an ethical failure to provide a fair and inclusive assessment environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situation should involve a systematic evaluation of feedback, a clear understanding of the institution's mission and values, and a commitment to ethical practice. This includes 1. Acknowledging and investigating all feedback, including efficiency studies. 2. Assessing the potential impact of identified issues on fairness, equity, and the quality of outcomes. 3. Consulting relevant stakeholders, e.g., admissions staff, faculty, potentially student representatives. 4. Developing and evaluating potential solutions against established ethical principles and the institution's goals. 5. Implementing changes transparently and monitoring their effectiveness. Question 19. During the evaluation of prospective students for the Adelaide Central School of Art, what is the most appropriate risk assessment approach to ensure a fair and objective selection process, considering the potential for bias in evaluating artistic merit and academic readiness? Option A. Focusing primarily on the candidate's technical execution in their submitted portfolio, disregarding conceptual depth or potential for development. Option B. Assessing the candidate's potential for future industry connections and perceived star quality based on initial impressions. Option C. Developing a structured assessment framework that clearly defines artistic and academic criteria, uses multiple evaluators, and documents the rationale for decisions. Option D. Evaluating the candidate's social media presence and personal life to gauge their fit with the school's culture. The correct answer is B. Assessing the candidate's potential for future industry connections and perceived star quality based on initial impressions. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need to assess a candidate's artistic potential with the ethical obligation to maintain a fair and unbiased selection process. The admissions committee must consider how potential biases, whether conscious or unconscious, could influence their risk assessment of a candidate's suitability for the Adelaide Central School of Art. The core of the challenge lies in objectively evaluating artistic merit and potential without being unduly swayed by personal preferences or external factors that are not directly related to artistic capability or academic readiness. The correct approach involves a structured and documented risk assessment that focuses on clearly defined artistic and academic criteria, as outlined in the Adelaide Central School of Art's admissions guidelines. This approach ensures that the evaluation is consistent, transparent, and defensible. By identifying potential risks to the integrity of the selection process and developing mitigation strategies, the committee can make informed decisions that are aligned with the school's educational objectives and its commitment to equity. This aligns with the general principles of good governance and fair assessment expected of educational institutions, an approach that relies heavily on the subjective interpretation of a candidate's passion, without concrete evidence or established criteria risks introducing personal bias. This fails to adhere to the principle of objective assessment, which is fundamental to fair selection processes. It could lead to favoritism or discrimination, undermining the credibility of the admissions process. An approach that prioritizes a candidate's perceived social connections or potential for future networking over their artistic portfolio and academic record is ethically unsound and contrary to the purpose of an art school entrance exam. This introduces irrelevant factors into the decision-making process and could disadvantage genuinely talented candidates who lack such connections. It violates the principle of meritocracy, which is essential for fostering artistic excellence. An approach that focuses solely on the immediate technical proficiency of a candidate, neglecting their potential for growth, conceptual development, and engagement with the school's curriculum, represents a narrow and potentially flawed risk assessment. While technical skill is important, Art education also emphasizes critical thinking, experimentation, and the development of a unique artistic voice. Overemphasis on immediate technical perfection can overlook candidates with strong conceptual ideas and a high capacity for learning and development, thereby misjudging the risk of admitting a candidate who might thrive with the school's specific pedagogical approach. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the Adelaide Central School of Art's stated admission criteria and values. This involves identifying potential risks to the fairness and validity of the assessment process, such as subjective bias or the influence of irrelevant factors. Mitigation strategies should then be developed, such as using standardized rubrics involving multiple assessors, and ensuring that all evaluations are documented and justifiable based on the established criteria. Regular review and reflection on the process are also crucial to identify and address any emerging issues. Question 20. System analysis indicates that the Adelaide Central School of Art Entrance Exam Admissions Committee is reviewing applicant portfolios, which risk assessment approach best aligns with the school's objective of identifying promising artistic talent and fostering a diverse student body while adhering to fair and ethical evaluation practices. Option A. Giving significant weight to an applicant's online presence and social media following as an indicator of their potential success and marketability. Option B. Evaluating portfolios primarily based on the applicant's demonstrated conceptual depth, originality, critical thinking, and potential for artistic development, as evidenced by their submitted work and artist statement. Option C. Favoring applicants whose work strictly adheres to established artistic conventions and traditional mediums, penalizing those who experiment with unconventional approaches. Option D. Assigning higher scores to portfolios that exhibit exceptional technical mastery, regardless of the conceptual or innovative aspects of the artwork. The correct answer is B. Evaluating portfolios primarily based on the applicant's demonstrated conceptual depth, originality, critical thinking, and potential for artistic development, as evidenced by their submitted work and artist statement. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an applicant to the Adelaide Central School of Art due to the inherent subjectivity in assessing artistic merit and potential. The challenge lies in balancing the need for a structured, objective evaluation process with the recognition that art is often about individual expression and innovation. The admissions committee must navigate potential biases, ensure fairness, and uphold the school's commitment to fostering diverse artistic talent, all while adhering to the specific guidelines of the Adelaide Central School of Art entrance exam. This requires a nuanced approach that goes beyond mere technical proficiency. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that prioritizes the applicant's demonstrated potential for artistic development and their alignment with the school's ethos. This means evaluating the portfolio not just for technical skill, but for conceptual depth, originality, critical thinking, and the applicant's ability to articulate their artistic intentions. Regulatory and ethical justification stems from the principle of fair assessment, ensuring that all applicants are judged on criteria relevant to artistic education and potential, rather than arbitrary or biased measures. This approach aligns with the educational mission of fostering creative individuals and upholding academic integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on technical proficiency without considering conceptual development or originality represents a failure to assess the full spectrum of artistic potential. This approach risks overlooking innovative or unconventional artists who may not yet have mastered traditional techniques but possess significant creative promise. It is ethically problematic as it narrows the definition of artistic merit and may disadvantage applicants with unique artistic voices. Prioritizing an applicant's perceived popularity or social media engagement over the quality and substance of their artwork is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. Such an approach introduces external, non-artistic factors into the assessment, undermining the integrity of the entrance exam. It is not aligned with the educational goals of an art school and can lead to the admission of less qualified candidates based on superficial metrics. Adopting a rigid adherence to a single, predefined artistic style or medium and penalizing applicants who deviate from it is also an incorrect approach. This stifles creativity and diversity, contradicting the very essence of artistic exploration. It fails to recognize that artistic growth often involves experimentation and the development of individual styles, and it risks excluding talented individuals who do not fit a narrow mold. Professional reasoning. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the institution's mission and the specific criteria for the entrance exam. This involves developing a rubric that assesses a range of factors including conceptual strength, originality, technical skill, where relevant to the applicant's stated intentions, and the applicant's potential for growth within the school's environment. Risk assessment in this context means identifying potential pitfalls such as bias, superficial evaluation, or a narrow definition of artistic merit, and actively mitigating these risks through a structured and transparent process. Regular review and calibration of assessment criteria with faculty are crucial to ensure ongoing relevance and fairness.